everyone. Welcome to another episode of our webinar series, A Day in the Life of. Today, we are very excited to welcome Dr. Tenielle Venter. She is a lecturer at CPUT in sports science. Tenielle, thank you so much for taking the time, especially on a Monday after hours, to talk to us about what you do and your whole experience as a lecturer at CPUT.
Such a pleasure. Happy to be here.
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, let's get started. Half an hour goes very, very quickly. Tenielle, maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about your journey that led you to become a lecturer at CPUT.
Perfect. So I actually didn't set out to be a lecturer when I first started studying. When I left matric, I wanted to do more biokinetics and that kind of area, sports science, more the practical side of things. So when I left matric, I moved to Port Elizabeth and I studied at a university there called Nelson Mandela University. And I studied my bachelor's in human movement science. So what happens with that degree is after your 3 years, you have to do what we call a comm service year. So you do a year community service where the university essentially places you somewhere so that you can get the experience that you need, the practical experience before essentially going out into the world of work. So it happened for me that during that practical year, it wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. So I was obviously quite stressed and devastated. I'd spent, all this money and these years studying, and I thought, oh gosh, now I can't use the degree. And luckily, my one, call it a mentor or a lecturer at the time, then suggested to me to study further, which was then my master's, so that I could have the option to fall back onto lecturing if that was something that I thought that was maybe what I would rather do. So thank goodness for her and for giving me this other option. So I went on to study my master's full-time, and after a master's qualification, then you are technically allowed to lecture at a tertiary university or a higher education institution in South Africa. So once I was finished with my master's, I then got my post at CPUT here in Cape Town. And about a year of lecturing, I then got an opportunity through a research project to do my PhD. So I ended up doing my PhD through the UWC, the University of the Western Cape. And the PhD is like the last qualification that you can get to be a lecturer. So I thought, well, at the time I was in my early 30s, I thought it would be a good idea to do the PhD as well, because at least then I would have like a long career to obviously use the PhD, and hopefully, that could add benefits for me. So originally the idea was to do biokinetics and all the practicals that came with that, and it just wasn't really fitting for me. So thank goodness there was another option. And then the lecturing I absolutely love. I've been doing it for 10 years now, and I'm really happy to still be doing it. Yeah.
Okay, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. So you're a sports science lecturer, but is this like a specialized field?
So every university will work differently in terms of the way their courses are structured. So I'm at CPUT, and we have what we call a sports management diploma. So within the sports management diploma, there are 4 major subjects that the students will have to do. And one of the majors is anatomy and physiology. So that's where I fit in with my biokinetics and sports science background. So I lecture the anatomy and physiology modules, which looks at the human body and also how exercise fits into our physiology and what our bodies need in order to exercise, how our muscles work, the energy that we need and all of that. So I lecture those subjects as a major for the students, but as a lecturer you also have to be quite versatile. So I do mostly anatomy and physiology because obviously that's my speciality, but I also lecture in sports marketing, a little bit of management. So we kind of move around every year or two. We'll move around a bit into different, still within the same course, but just different subjects within that course. But they generally like to keep you obviously where you are the most qualified, because then you're obviously an expert in your field and you're the best fit then for that particular subject for the students.
Yeah. I've never heard of sports marketing before, Tenielle. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
So sports marketing is just basically all the same marketing principles that we are accustomed to. However, with the sports marketing, it just focuses more on how you would market sports events, sports coaching, how you would market yourself if you were a sports event or something like that. So it's the same principles of marketing, but it's just got a more sports specific focus, because sport has become one of the fastest growing industries globally. So there really is a lot of place for sport marketers, sport managers in society today. I mean, from the smallest things to doing ticketing at the stadium to organizing the VIP area, there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes for sport events to be successful. So sports marketing is just more of a streamlined approach to marketing, where it's looking at marketing sports specifically, whether it's the sport product or the actual sport activity.
Okay, that's very interesting. Tenielle, maybe as a lecturer, there's obviously a lot more responsibility than just lecturing the group as a whole. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what's a day like in your life and the other activities you have as a lecturer or responsibilities.
Yes. Yeah, sure. Because I think everyone thinks it really is just lecturing or
Okay, we seem to have some connection issues. I was just going to suggest that maybe you should keep your camera off, Tenielle. And then maybe that helps with the connection situation. We're just going to try and get Tenielle back here for a minute. Okay, guys, we're just going to pause the session and see if we can't get Tenielle back. Please bear with us. So, all right, Tenielle, you're back.
Perfect.
You can continue. You were basically saying that.
Great, thank you. So sorry about that.
It's not a problem.
Yes. The lecturing and teaching is the main core responsibility of the job, but a really big part is also that of research. So big corporate companies, people in the food industry, all of that needs research in order to obviously make advancements in whatever kind of business or field that they are in. So research becomes a really important part of our kind of job description as well. And we are often under a lot of pressure, I would say, where every are expected to produce so many research outputs, whether it's journal articles, book chapters, or you speaking at a conference or whatever it might be, because there are various types of research. And also what happens is corporate companies, whether it's a school or whatever it might be, they would come to our university and say what kind of research they are needing done, and then see which department can take on that kind of research project. So the only way we kind of move forward, I guess, is all new textbooks, books that we read, or research articles that are available and on the internet, is all because research. So research really is an important part of the job.
All right.
So the research part becomes a really important part as well.
Okay. All right. That's very interesting. Tenielle, tell us, with lecturing and research, and I can imagine research takes a significant portion of your time. How do you manage your time?
I would generally say with a priority to-do list. So having a look at what the dates are for certain deadlines, and then just working back from that to fit everything in, because it does get quite busy, especially when you add on exams and tests, and then there's marking that needs to be done as well. But I think as long as you are quite organized and you have, like an open, like kind of calendar or diary that you're working with. And I would say what helps me a lot is just prioritizing work that needs to be done by their due date. Um, yeah, so that's why you often find lecturers will work until all hours of the night, because that's the only time that you've had in the day to, get your things done. But it's obviously not always like that. There obviously are periods of time when it's lots of pressure and a big push because there's a deadline for a book chapter or an article. And then unfortunately, you do need to work a bit extra to get all of those in, because during the day, you're also busy with lectures and other meetings or preparing lectures. So sometimes the evenings are the only quiet time, I guess, that there is to focus on that.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. You've definitely got a full plate. But tell me, what's your favorite part about being a lecturer?
I would think for me, it's that every day is quite different. So it's not the same 8 to 5 job all the time. The way my university works is that you go to the campus when you've got class or meetings. And if you don't have class or you don't have a meeting, then you can work from home. I don't think all universities are like that, but we've had this kind of hybrid model even before COVID. So that works quite well, because sometimes I'll be at Stellenbosch University for a meeting, because universities often collaborate and work together. So sometimes I'll be there, other times I might be at Belleville or have meetings at District 6. So you often are in a different environment and doing something different every day. So I think that keeps it quite interesting and exciting, because it's a mixture of lectures, meetings, doing practical experience with the students, where you take them out to the industry and they get to do some practical things. And obviously the students as well, every year you have a new group and you see them grow and flourish from their first year. Then they come back and they end up doing their masters with you as a supervisor. So I think it is really great to see the progress that they make in their academic journey, and also just their life in general. A lot of students keep in touch and let us know where they're working or what experiences they've had. And then it does make it all worthwhile and quite exciting.
Yeah. So speaking of the students, Tenielle, and especially as a lecturer, so the year is nearly coming to an end. A lot of the students are, well, there's, a graduating year up ahead. What advice would you give to students who are on the verge of graduating and looking for employment opportunities, or looking to pursue the next degree?
Well, firstly, for pursuing the next degree, I always let my students know at the beginning of the year that if pursuing another degree is part of their plan, then they do need to plan for that, because we only take a certain amount of students in honors and masters and a doctoral program. So we obviously work mostly on the top marks. So it is
Yeah.
important for students that if that is the plan, then that they are aware of that from the outset, and they can manage, their year and their time in such a way that they are giving themselves opportunity to get into those programs. And then also when it comes to in the world of work, I would suggest, and I often encourage my students from first year already, see where you can do something that upskills you, whether it's learning how to use a marketing app on your phone, or it's doing a first aid course, or whether you're doing a strapping course or something like that, whatever the field is. Obviously with my students, they're more in the line of sport, so I try and encourage them where opportunities arise, where you can do something extra, like you've got a level 1 coaching degree to your name. All of that just helps to build your CV, because we all know that the unemployment rate is a little bit high in South Africa. So with hundreds of CVs to work through, what are you going to do so that yours can stand out? So by having these extra little certificates and courses that you've done, it not only will show the potential employer that you are willing to go the extra mile, that you've used initiative, but obviously then you'll be more employable than somebody who doesn't have those extras. And another thing is just to always keep track of all of it. Sometimes you'll do a course or a short course or a certificate in something, and then you end up losing that information. So it's always important to keep it on your CV and keep copies or proof of those certificates, whether you've done volunteer work or whatever it might be, because that all adds to what employers are looking for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fantastic advice, especially, what you're saying about documenting and keeping proof of everything in some kind of an orderly manner so that you can, reach for it when you need to. Tenielle, what about, we're talking about upskills in terms of short courses and extracurriculars, social work. What are your thoughts on soft skills for this generation going into the employment space?
I often find it such an interesting word because we also refer to it as soft skills, but I feel like it's the word soft maybe makes it not sound as important as it is, you know. But the soft skills definitely are very important for students to not only be aware of, but also to have some kind of experience in those kinds of soft skills. So when you go into the world of work, you don't just have all this theory. Um, and that behind your name. So what we try and do at our university is we offer community service kind of projects, lots of volunteering opportunities as well, because then we find that students then are exposed to real life situations and they can learn how to resolve conflicts and communicate better or be more creative when there's an opportunity where they need to do that, or they learn how to be reliable and be on time. They learn how to be accountable because someone is expecting them to be there and they've got a particular task or job that needs to be done. So I do think the soft skills are really more like power skills than soft skills, because we use them so much in our day, I think, without always realizing it. And they really are very important. Sometimes people would even say more important than, the actual theory that you've learned, because you need to use those soft skills to communicate, negotiate with future employers, people in the world of work, etc.
Yeah. We've often had people on the show that say, aside from specific sort of industries that you're entering into, skills can be taught as long as you know how to communicate and you know how to listen. And I love that you've now added, you have you can hold yourself accountable, because
Yeah.
I think we're almost sort of living in a society right now where people will say, well, it's not me, it's the other person. So to be able to bring this generation to a place where they understand accountability is very, very important. Tenielle, we're almost out of time. So I do have one or two questions. There are also some from the audience that unfortunately I won't get to. I am curious about your PhD in the sense
Okay.
of what's next for you. Where are you thinking? Where are you heading?
At the moment, so how it works at a university level is the PhD is the highest level that you can study for yourself. When it comes to associate professor and professor, those you get given from the university once you have achieved enough points on each level. So there are 5 different levels at my university. Again, I'm not sure how the other universities work, but for example, they'll your qualification. Okay, so then you get the points because you've got the PhD. Then there'll be a second level where, for example, it's teaching and learning. So you'll have to have lots of evidence and examples of what you've done to uplift students in terms of their teaching and learning practices, and then you get points based on what you've done. Then there'll be a research leg, so whether you've published in journal articles or you've done book chapters or whatever it might, conference proceedings, you get points for that as well. So that's how the associate professor and professors work. So I think that's something that I would like to work towards. So at the moment, where I'm just focusing my time on is conferences, research articles, and I've got a book chapter, my second book chapter for the year that's due at the end of October. So for me, I think it's just to constantly do these kinds of research things that are in my field, to also improve my expertise and keep me abreast with what's knowledgeable and what's at the forefront of all the information, keeping up to date with all the latest trends and all of that, because you also can get left behind quite quickly if you're not constantly up to date with what's going on. So for me, it's just trying to, I would say, improve my research profile so that I can then perhaps one day apply for something like that. And also what's big for me is just community service. So I work a lot with the Rotary of of Claremont at the moment, just because they are the closest to our campus. So for transportation and stuff, because I just think it's good for us as a university. We've got students, we've got manpower, for us to give back to the community, and also for our students to learn those important lessons that we also need to give back where we can.
Yeah, now that's so fantastic to hear, and I love that you're doing this with your students. The ones that are involved in this. We don't often hear that, so I commend you. That's so wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
Tenielle, we're out of time. Unfortunately, I would have loved to continue this conversation, but I just want to take a moment and thank you for appearing on the show and wishing you the very best.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All righty. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye.